Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are in. I hope you are thriving and not just surviving. Welcome to yet another episode of the Bibliophile Circle, our very own book lovers virtual club. People join us from all across the world, and today I have Amra with me all the way from Lahore. I am live from Dubai. Uh, Amra, you're probably the third one from Lahore. We've had up till now 6 to 7 cities joining us in this virtual club. This is the ninth episode. Amra is a seasoned HR professional, but more than that, she's an avid reader, and she's not just a reader who reads for herself. She loves to share what she learns and then also share her own experiences of the book. Amra, thank you for agreeing to be a part of this episode and bringing us a great writer. Uh, a lot of stuff that the writer writes, and then I think we'll be talking about it in our episode. Is not is not run of the mill. It's not day to day stuff. It's deep, and sometimes it even challenges our core, the way we look at life. The book that we are discussing today is Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. And the book is all about it. It's about being imperfect. We usually talk about nobody's perfect, but we don't really believe in it. And then today we'll actually see why being imperfect is okay, rather more than okay, how it makes our life really worthwhile for living. Great. So Amra, let's quickly dive in straight to the book. Tell us a little bit about the book, and what is it all about, and then let's go through different sections of the book.
Okay. Thank you very much, Naman. I think it's absolutely exciting to be here and talking about Brené's work. The Gifts of Imperfection is a very unique book, I must say, because it's coming from a very profound and well grounded research, which was done by Brené for a very long period of time. Many years research has gone into the book, which makes it far more authentic and also resonates with you, especially if you are in a journey of living a wholehearted life. So the book starts with, and the whole sort of notion around the book is how to live a wholehearted life. All of us, we want to be perfection, be successful, but that's where sort of, it really breaks those norms and those kind of ideals in our minds to bring us much more closer to what is wholehearted living and how to go about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting how you've also started, and the book talks about wholehearted life, where we talk about uh, uh, you get only one life to live, and then all these cliches and stuff that we speak about. Well, for some odd reason we don't live a wholehearted life. It's always something is missing. uh, so great. Everybody who's online with us, please do share where you are coming from, which city are you joining us from. Maybe just drop in a hi. We have Gulshan with us. We have Zen joining us from Karachi. And we're talking about a book which is called The Gifts of Imperfection. And Amra, you just summed it up, that it's all about living a wholehearted life, and yet it's about imperfection. So yeah. So take us to a little bit more deeper. I think that Brené talks about the three C's of the book. Yeah. So probably let's go through this, and then let's take our participants over here through a journey of the three C's, and how we can live a wholehearted life.
Yeah. So, talking about wholeheartedness, the key is that we live from a place of worthiness, and that's where the wholehearted living comes from. And when you talk about wholehearted living, there are three components that she talks about, which are three C's: compassion, courage, and connection. So courage, we know that it's like, and it's not like, doing something extraordinary. So she says it's ordinary courage. It's ordinary, being in the ordinary moments rather than talking and thinking about the extraordinary moments to happen, which will shake us and make us and, will give us some kind of aha moments,
Yeah.
which I think is very, very fascinating because when you read the book, it really talks to you in a very humane level. And
Hmm.
that's where sort of you feel well grounded into the book as you're reading it. So when she talks about courage, she talks about simple bravery. And when she talks about compassion, there's a lot of things around self-love and compassion and empathy,
Mm.
and then finally the connection, which is love and belonging. So these are very simple ingredients. So if you look at it that way, so it's wholehearted living. There are three C's, and then there are some ingredients that goes to make the full recipe. So that's how it is. The three C's, talking a little bit, detail. One of the key concepts which comes in the book is that why it is so difficult to live
Mm.
through these three C's. So
Mm.
courage, compassion, and connection. What makes it difficult to achieve it? We all understand what is bravery. We all understand love and belonging. We love each other, right? We love, our parents and our children and our spouses and our partners. But then what is that barrier which is in our life which hinders our progress towards wholehearted living? And
Right.
that's where Renee's work on shame and vulnerability is absolutely profound. I think that's where the whole sort of the one of the key core component of the book is around the shame and shame resilience.
Right. Yeah. Uh, Amra, I was really intrigued about the name of the book. And we did speak about it a little bit. We're always striving for perfection, but why imperfection? And then why is it okay to be imperfect? And usually you spoke about compassion. We're not very self-compassionate. We're not okay to be imperfect. And what does Brand's research says about this?
Yeah.
And does she from the book? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting, Naman, because see what and I'll just share one of the anecdotes that Brené shares in the book.
Sure.
Just to, give you an example. It is so she says that she created a list with her husband on the list of a fulfilled life. What does
Right.
a fulfilled life will mean for both of them, right?
Right.
And created that list, and then they also had created a list previously which is their dream list.
Wow.
What do they want to sort of, and the dream list was all about achievements and acquisitions, building a bigger house, getting children to get educated in one of the finest schools and universities, and writing the books, and getting a lot of success professionally, right? Whereas the fulfilled life was far more different. So for
Hmm.
example, spending more quality time with your children, for
Wow.
example, saying no to some things which are not relevant and not in line with. And that's where she narrated that how she started saying no to a lot of things. And that's where,
Hmm.
if you ask me, that really resonate that part really resonates with me. Why? Because there is a lot of phenomenon around women specifically regarding, and even now more so with men under the COVID situation, that how do you balance your work life?
Yeah.
Because now, especially it's now it's like, which is good in a way that it's not a gender specific question at all, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is becoming that how do you create that balance in your life? How do you ensure that you have certain boundaries in your life? So I
Hmm.
think that really goes into that basis, that what is the idea of living a fulfilled life versus the dream list that you have.
Right.
And about imperfections, see this, the achievement and the acquisitions and these pursuits that we have. Brené talks a lot about that these are all the things which takes the person and all of us to perfectionism, right?
Yeah.
We want
Yeah.
to do the thing in the best way, in the best manner, to its nth level. But then there is a thing which is just being
Yeah.
rather than doing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
being in the moment, and just sort of be in touch with what you're doing in that particular moment, and just sort of maybe smiling to a stranger, and maybe opening a door for somebody.
Right.
So these are the things that gives us meaning,
Yeah.
and where
Yeah.
the book brings a lot of detail around this particular ingredient on meaningful and purpose based life.
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
so that's where, and we all are imperfect, so we have our imperfections. So getting into and rather than getting into a life whereby you're just trying to be perfect all times, this is a very exhaustive life.
Yeah.
And she beautifully narrates it, that how exhaustion has become a symbol of status symbol in US.
Yes.
And I was looking, I was reading, I was like, no, it's not only in US. I think US has successfully, or they have disseminated this whole concept. The exhaustive life or the busy life is an ideal life for us. Like, I
Yeah.
need to back to back to back to back, and then I am very proudly saying that I had back to back meetings, I had back to back this and all of that. But then does it bring meaning to us?
Yeah.
If it does,
Yeah.
then it's a fulfilled life. If it
Yeah.
doesn't, then we are living in a very perfectionist way. So I think that's where there are many. This becomes very, very philosophical also, but then the right questions to ask to yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and I think this is amazing because there used to be times when if you ask somebody, "How are you?" or "How are you doing?" And the reply would be "Good, great." These days, you get a reply "Busy,"
Yeah.
and people feel proud about it. "Oh, I'm busy," and sometimes you go back and say, "Oh, busy is good," but when you just really wait, sit, think about it, busy is not necessarily good. So I think this is amazing how you spoke about dream life and fulfilled life, and again, there's nothing wrong to be to dream big things, but I think, and then this is exactly how Brene in the book talks about how your worthiness is not necessarily connected to things outside of you but inside of you, and there's nothing wrong in going for things outside of you, but but your worthiness comes from within and it is not dependent on others. So I think that was a very powerful part that I felt, which came from the book, and I think you narrated it very nicely. uh, you spoke about courage, you spoke about the basic level of courage, the basic level of compassion. Let's go a little bit deeper into self-compassion, and what does that mean, and then how Brene talks about it, because I think that's something which is very, very important. We're usually very, how should I say it, we're cruel to ourselves, we're unkind to ourselves. So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about self-compassion as Brene talks about it.
Sure. So, in the compassion, it is the book talks. It actually starts with that. Do you love yourself more or others? Right. And she beautifully narrates that how much less importance we give to self love, how much great importance we are comfortable giving love and creating our sense of belonging to other people. But that's where the compassion falters, because compassion, and in order to live that wholehearted life, it's way more important that you start from within yourself, and self love and compassion then becomes a key to open up that compassion for others. So I'm going
Right.
to read something from the book,
Sure. Yeah,
just
that would be
to get
amazing.
good
Yeah.
justice. Um, so it starts with saying, and this is the guidepost number 2: cultivating self-compassion, letting go of perfectionism, and that's the tough bit. The thing that is really hard and really amazing is giving up on being perfect and beginning the work of becoming yourself. And this quote is super amazing. And then, and let me just narrate you, because she's narrating here a story from her blog, right?
Hmm.
And she says that in one of the emails she received on shame and perfectionism, she received an email and she said that, I love the idea of a read along. I don't think I have shame issues, but if you ever do something on perfectionism, I will be the first in line. Her sign off was followed by a short little sentence that read, please see, shame and perfectionism aren't related, are they? I emailed her back and explained the relationship between shame and perfectionism. Where perfectionism exists, shame is always lurking. In fact, shame is the birthplace of perfectionism.
Wow.
And just see that, how this, and this was like an aha moment, right?
Yeah.
Because you never think about it, that how your pursuit of becoming perfect is kind of sort of connected with that fear in yourself, whereby you feel that you have certain vulnerabilities which will show if you don't appear perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where the whole Brene's work, she speaks about those fine relationships between Where is this shame coming from? And this is
Mm.
where our self-worth or self-esteem issues are connected with, when we start doing everything with a lot of perfectionism
Right,
without realizing and without even thinking about it, that where it is coming from, why we
right.
want to be perfect in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I think again coming back to the whole idea of dream versus fulfilled, perfect versus imperfect, and then we start feeling shame because we we set very high targets, of perfection, which is not human. And when we don't achieve it, we start getting that shame, and then this shame causes all the three C's to go for a toss.
Yeah,
Our courage goes for a toss when we are not able to achieve that perfection, and then we start feeling shameful. Our compassion for others and for ourselves goes for a toss.
yeah,
That's interesting how we get very uncompassionate, if that's the word, or incompassionate. And our connection goes down the drain also, because of that shame. So I think that really makes it, how these three C's makes the life worthy of living. Let's go a little bit deeper into the whole idea of shame and decoding. Let's decode shame a little bit, as Brené talks about it.
absolutely, absolutely. So, I will read through the passage here, which talks about that, how to overcome, because I think there is one important aspect that we should touch upon, that how do you overcome perfectionism? And it
Yes.
says that to overcome perfectionism, we need to be able to acknowledge our vulnerabilities to the universal experiences of shame, judgment, and blame. Develop shame resilience and practice self compassion. When we become more loving and compassionate with ourselves, and we begin to practice shame resilience, we can embrace our imperfections. It is in the process of embracing our imperfections that we find our truest gifts: courage, compassion, and connection.
Right. Uh, that's interesting, and I think I love this word, shame resilience. These days, because of COVID, we're talking a lot about resilience, and then we were even chatting just before we were starting the episode, how we want to be so perfect. Where all this work from home has really changed things. But there was this clip which was found very funny, doing rounds, where on BBC interview, there's a scientist or a philosopher, or somebody who was talking, an expert who was talking about something, and his children just barge into the room, and it became a very funny thing, rather than people appreciating the fact. And even you could see shame and fear on his face, because he was suddenly, his perfection was going down the drain. And now, with all this COVID and working from home, all this is so normal, and so common. Rather, other people appreciate this. And then this is where I think our shame resilience is coming in from. And I think, probably, just the way you said, we need to identify our imperfections and be okay with it.
Absolutely.
um
Absolutely.
but
And one of the
yeah.
key things that she talks about, when she talks about that, how do you then overcome shame? So once
Yeah.
you've understood that your perfectionism and your ability to perform, perfectly, is emanating from shame, what do you do then? So, for example, she beautifully narrates an example that she was giving a talk, and there was a lot of shame feeling that she felt during that session. There were certain questions and all of that, and talking about vulnerability and shame. And this is coming from the shame researcher herself. So think about the vulnerability that she's putting in when she's writing this book, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So she then calls one of her friends to just narrate to her that what exactly happened right away, right? And that was a very good lesson for me, because a lot of times what we do, that we do not acknowledge the emotion of shame. For example, if I had a bad presentation in office, right, I miserably failed, right, it was a bad presentation, right, what do I do? There is a shame, you're feeling that way, right, but what do you do, right? So the book really gives you those tools. So it says that not everybody needs to know your story. So if I am having a bad day, not everybody needs to know about it. But then, if there is something, I should have a trusted circle. One or two people are good enough,
Yeah.
you can go to. And
Yeah.
then Renee, she talks about, what are the qualities that when somebody with shame approaches you, how do you behave and what is empathetic listening?
Hmm.
So, for example, I'll tell you, and this is something I have found with a lot of ambitious people per se. The problem with ambitious people is that when you talk to them about your problem, they will go one notch up, and they will
Yeah.
say that, okay, whatever happened to you, it's okay. Let me tell you what happened to me. That's not being empathetic. That's not being empathetic listening, right? You
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
and when you're in shame, you don't want to listen to that. You want
Yeah.
somebody to say that, I feel you, I've
Yeah.
been there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is awful. So you
Yeah.
need that kind of validation in that very moment, and
Yeah.
that's because it's part of that shame resilience. And
Yeah.
and then Renee talks about that shame wants to be, silence, and you should not be talking about it, because that's the space where it grows.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about shame, it kind of
Mm,
fades away. and
mm,
and and how many times do we really get to talk about shame
yeah.
in our society, and
Yeah.
specifically?
Yeah, yeah. So on a lighter note, we should be shameless, and then we should also not talk about shame, and stay away from shameful people, who are striving for perfection. Well, that was on the lighter note, but interestingly, you rightly said it. How many times do we have that inner circle where we are okay to be vulnerable to? And I think that's where it's important that people are not ready to be vulnerable, and it's also because of the minute you start talking about your shame, people from outside start looking down on you. And I think this is why it is. What does a book say about that? How do you handle people from outside, on things, and which impacts your own self compassion also?
It's a great question. So I'll say the solution to this is authenticity, and that's where the book
Yeah.
talks about
Yeah.
authenticity, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
authenticity is just being your true self in that moment, right?
Mm,
So that's where the authenticity comes from. One part of this is, which was a good learning for me, was that in terms of the vulnerabilities and shame resilience, you don't need gazillions of friends, or the virtual friends for that matter. You just need, even if you have one person to go to,
yeah.
so that that person is there for you to validate, and be empathetic in that moment.
Mm,
That's what you need. So I think that's where the fear comes in, that we think that we are becoming vulnerable in front of the world, because the social media, and with all of these things, with all and Brené also talks a lot about her own blog writings and the experiences she had, right? And the
yeah.
different kind of hate comments and all of that everyone gets. I think the most important thing is that, and it's like, it's okay.
Mm,
It will not be always perfect,
mm,
but just staying authentic to yourself is what
mm.
she explains, that becomes the antidote to it.
Okay. Now this might be the tough one, and probably for Brene, not for you, because we're discussing Brene's book over here. How do you really be authentic to yourself? Because I think that's even more that's really challenging in these days. And I'm sure Brene talks a lot about this, how media, is making things difficult for us, how social media is making things difficult for us. How do you really be authentic as per the book?
Okay, great. So let's go to the guidepost number one:
All right.
cultivating authenticity, letting go of what people think. So that's
Mm,
where it kicks in, right? Often
mm,
people tend to live their lives backwards. They try to have more things or more money in order to do more of what they want, so that they will be happier. The way it actually works is the reverse. You
mm.
must first be who you really are, then then do what you really need to do in order to have what you want. This is by Margaret Young. And then in this one, she speaks about that authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we are supposed to be and embracing who we are. Choosing authenticity means cultivating the courage to be imperfect, to set boundaries, and to allow ourselves to be
Mm,
vulnerable. Exercising the compassion that comes from knowing that we are all made of strength and struggle, and
mm,
nurturing the connection and sense of belonging that can only happen when we believe that we are enough. So it's the beautiful way. So it's like the three C's, which gives you authenticity, right? So you remain courageous in the
Yeah.
difficult situations to, and you have your boundaries, right? And then you
Mm.
allow yourself to be vulnerable and be seen in that courage, in that courage. And this is about ordinary courage. Let me just
Yeah.
reiterate. She says that it's about ordinary courage. So, for example, if your child wants something to be done, he or she should have that courage to ask you, right? Rather than
Mm.
to be
Mm.
fearful.
Mm.
Exercising the compassion, right? Which is coming from starting from your own self love.
Mm.
And understanding that we are imperfect beings. We have our own strengths and we all have our struggles, right? So leaving that perfectionism piece and rather than embracing of who we
Yeah.
are as a whole person. And finally, it goes to that how do you connect yourself and sense of belonging with yourself and others. And that's where Brene speaks about spirituality,
Mm.
that she found that the wholehearted people were the ones who had high spirituality index as well, right? So they believed that they were part of something bigger, because that's where the connection comes in, that we are not alone and we are not isolated, but we are rather connected. So, for example, in this very moment, Renee, you, I, and our viewers are actually connected. We are all,
Mm.
it's not like the internet connectivity, but it's like one connection where we
Yeah.
are exchanging ideas and we're exchanging the information.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that's the sense of belonging.
Yeah. I I think this is amazing, and Amra, you've done great justice to this book in less than 30 minutes. This is a very, very deep book, and I usually say,
Trust me on this one. This was the most
yeah.
the 30 minutes and doing justice to Brené's work. Yeah, it's tough.
And then I usually say these episodes are not book reviews. They're not even critiques. Rather than not critiques, because we only share books that we really thoroughly love. And they're not book summaries, so if you really like what you've seen over here, go pick up the book, and then go through it. It's really deep, and I think this book changes the way you look at things. And if I have to summarize, and from this episode, Amra, I think takeaways for me would be, I'm going to go back and then probably with my wife, create a fulfill list versus a dream list. We all have dreams lists, but we need to create fulfill lists, and probably work more on self compassion and shame resilience, because again, as I said, on a lighter note, but on a very, very serious note, it's okay to be shameless. You don't need to go show to the world that you're shameless, but be shameless from within. Don't feel shame because of perfection, but just create that shame resilience, which causes you to be more perfect. So great, thank you very much. This was our episode number 9 on the Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Amra, you want to say some last words, and then I'll be ending this episode.
I think it was, first of all, Noman, thank you so very much for inviting me and having me here. I think it's a fantastic initiative. Keep at it, because these things are, very, very, they're great for those people who are kind of, having that kind of appetite and don't get to read the books all the time. But kind of these 30 minutes give them a great kind of overview and they can pick the book, as you said. So thank you very much for having this platform. I think for me, the Gifts of Imperfection is part of my journey. So my ending note to the viewers would be, you know where you are in terms of your own journey.
Mm.
You know where you stand in terms of your own struggles and your strengths and what you want to achieve in life, or what you are foregoing in life, or you're letting go in life at this very moment. Maybe you've gone through something during these pandemic times which are completely unprecedented.
Yeah.
So if you want to understand that, how do you pick it up and how do you continuously transforming your life, then this is your go-to book. Thank you very much.
Super great. Thank you, Amra, rather, for joining. And I know you've put in a lot of effort creating notes and then putting it all of this together. We have a Facebook group. There's a page also. Don't go to the page. There's a Facebook group called the Bibliophile Circle, where we continue our discussions and sharing insights over the week. So, Amra, would be great if you could probably share some more insights there when I share this episode.
Sure.
Thank you very much. This book was all about living a worthy life, a life which is worthy of living. And with this, I'll come to the end of the episode. As I started the episode by saying, I hope you're thriving and not just surviving. Go thrive. You don't need to survive. Fight shame. It's okay to be imperfect and go thrive in the life. Thank you very much for all those who joined us or would probably join us in the recording later on. Keep connected to our YouTube channel, and you'll get more Bibliophile Circles episodes coming your way. Thank you.
Thank you so